Welcome to the Home Birth After Cesarean podcast. Due to the rate of unnecessary C-sections, the lack of support, and limited options for VBAC moms in the hospital, more and more women are choosing to have their VBAC babies at home. This podcast was created for women to share and listen to stories of home birth after cesarean. I'm your host, Rachel Garrett. Today we're chatting with Kelli, and Kelli is going to share her two birth stories with us. So do you just want to start us off with an introduction?
Sure. Gosh, okay, so what year is it? I turned 37 in August, and I had my second baby in July, day after the 4th, so July 5th. But we'll get to that. I'm still a cosmetologist. I'm sure a lot of people are a little bit lost with the whole COVID situation. I'm feeling a little lost myself because I had a salon and spa suite. I own my own business, and then my lease was up right when everything crazy started happening with COVID. So like everything closed down and literally nobody was supposed to go anywhere. And that was when I was supposed to make the decision of signing my lease again with my salon. So I let that go because everything was just so up in the air. So I let that go for now. And that's when we decided that it was probably a great time to just go ahead and have baby number 2. I live in Illinois, just west of Chicago. My family own a campground here, and my husband works for my family, and we actually live right here on the campground. It's good for me because I would go a little bit crazy probably if I couldn't at least go downstairs and say hi to somebody, because I'm a pretty chatty person. And if you want to ask my toddler, she thinks that I know everybody everywhere I go because I pretty much just talk to everybody everywhere I go. So yeah, that's the basics, I guess.
Well, why don't you take us through, or I mean, wherever you want to start, but taking us through that first pregnancy and birth.
Yeah. I don't think that I could have asked for like an easier pregnancy as a whole. Getting pregnant was really about as easy as you could probably ask for. I mean, it was like we started planning for a baby, like, what was it, October 2017. We're like, okay, let's, start trying to figure that out. And I was tracking my cycles and such. And then it was like, we took a break over the beginning of the year. And then it was like it's like May, bam, we were pregnant, right? The first month. It was like one shot. I was like, okay, I know exactly when that happened. So that was really cool that we didn't have, because our age, we start to get a little bit panicky. But I mean, it kind of it happened for us really easily. I feel like, so that was a huge, huge, huge blessing for us. So I know there's moms out there that have tried for forever. So I really I can't imagine that. So I was really grateful that for us, it happened when we were ready. The only thing that I had that I would say was a struggle with that pregnancy was I think it was like week 35. I had the worst case of PUPS. And for anyone who doesn't know what PUPS is, PUPPPS, PUPS, I don't even remember what it actually stands for, but it's a pregnancy rash. And the only way to get rid of it is to give birth. And it was everywhere, like everywhere. It was only the palms of my hands, the soles of my feet, and my face were like the only places it wasn't. It was everywhere. And my husband was helping me get slathered in calamine lotion like as many times a day as we could, because there was nothing to relieve of the itch. It was like the worst itch of my life. And it came from it started where my stretch marks were and then just expanded all over my body. It was nuts. The only thing I could find was calamine lotion, and I would get in the bathtub like 4 times a day and use this strange smelling soap called Grandpa's Pine Tar Soap. And that was like the only thing, it was a bar of soap that I would just like rub on my arms. And like, that was like really the only thing that would help me feel any kind of like relief from just having this crazy, crazy, crazy itch.
So at what point did you end up going into labor?
So it was 39 weeks and 2 days.
Okay, so it was a good month that you had that then before baby came.
Yeah. Yeah, and they kept saying, well, we can talk about inducing. I was like, no. I said, he or she, because we didn't find out what we were having. So I said, he or she can stay in there as long as they want. It's fine. I can deal with it. It'll be okay. And so I was pretty much like insistent upon like they'll come when they're ready. I didn't want to be induced. I know that there are reasons, other women choose that. No judgment there. For me personally, I just wanted to let he or she come naturally. Or him or her come naturally, I should say. So I was just waiting, and I was at home cleaning, and I took a bathroom break, and I sort of felt like almost like a little bubble pop. And, at the time, of course, I didn't know for sure what that was, but I thought, oh, And I laid down, and then I kind of felt like a little leaking. So then I got back up and I went to go to the bathroom. And then like, as soon as I pulled my pants down, it was like all over the floor. And I was like, they said at the birth class that this isn't how it usually happens, that the movies are a lie. Your water doesn't gush all over, So I was like, go figure. I have this extremely rare pregnancy rash, and then my water breaks and gushes everywhere. And so, we wanted to like labor at home as much as possible, but in the birthing class, they said, if your water breaks, come in. So I was like, all right, well, there's that. So we weren't like panicking and rushing around. We were kind of taking our time, but we were definitely getting ready to head to the hospital. And my husband kind of was like getting everything around last minute, the stuff we use on a daily basis. Like he's got his contact stuff and glasses and our phone charger stuff that we didn't pack, but we want to bring. And so he's getting all those last minute things. And I was like sitting on we got like 3 little steps up to our like second level. And I was sitting there, my mom's helping me get my shoes on, and he's running around, and he's all of a sudden just freaking out. I can't find my shoes. And I was like, what's going on? They're right over there. And I pointed to the spot where his shoes were supposed to be, and my shoes were over there. And I look at my feet, and then I look back at the spot, and I look at my feet, and I look back at the spot, and I'm wearing his shoes. My mom had put his shoes on my feet, and I didn't even notice because they were so swollen. So I was like, actually, I'm wearing your shoes. So we stop on the way to the hospital so he can get an SD card, because I want a video camera rolling. I want to capture the whole thing as much as possible. So I was like, I couldn't, I didn't have time to dump the photos off my SD card that I already had. So he's like, I'm just going to run into Walgreens and get one. He's so flustered too. He goes in there and asks for Scan Dix. And the brand is called ScanDisc. And so he goes in there, asks for ScanDix, and the lady's like, huh? he just starts laughing, like, my wife's in labor, I can't talk. So we're cracking up about that the whole way, the rest of the way to the hospital. Hospital is probably 35-40 minutes away. So it's, a little bit of a drive. And so I'm just dealing with the contractions on the way there. I've got a towel underneath me too, because my water just does not stop coming. So I asked him when we get to the hospital, do you know where you're going? And he's like, yeah, so he pulls up to one door, literally nobody around anywhere. And it was like, okay, I don't think this is the right spot. So he jumps out, nope, not the right spot, comes back in the car. And so then I'm, still contracting, and he goes to another set of doors, and there's nobody there either. And I was like, oh my gosh, I thought you said you knew where you were going. So he goes to one more spot, and this woman comes out, and she's got a wheelchair. She's like, you know what? You're not in the right spot, but I'm going to wheel you across, and he's going to go park. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I can walk. She's no. Sit in this chair. I'm going to wheel you over there. So we get over there, and we get to the counter. We're doing the check-in, And I was like, oh, sitting there contracting, and he's answering questions, I'm answering questions. I was like, they told us to do this ahead of time, but here we are. And they're, I'm kind of looking at my watch going like, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, because they're getting pretty close together. We finally get in the room and they check me, and it must have been a student nurse. She checks me first and she gives the other nurse like a side eye. And so the other nurse is like kind of going, okay, I'll check. So the student steps aside and the other nurse sticks her hand in there and was like, yep, breech. And I was like, what?
Had there been any indication leading up to that point that baby was breech?
None. They had been telling me for weeks, and I had seen multiple doctors because my favorite doctor within the practice retired. So I wanted to get to know all the doctors. I'd rotated through all of them, and at least 3 or 4 of them in the weeks, when you do those weekly appointments going up to the end, at least 3 or 4 of them said they felt his or her head whenever they checked me. And I was just a couple centimeters dilated, and probably 3 weeks before I went in. And so I was like, what? No. And I was freaking out, like, because I knew that's what that meant. Like, I didn't have a choice. Like, in my own head at this point, I'm like, I didn't have a choice. What's going on? So I lose my mind. And only because, I was prepared, if after hearing all the information at the birthing class and other moms' experiences, I was prepared that if I tried labor, it didn't work out, whatever, if it was what was best for myself and the baby, of course I would go ahead and get a C-section, but it's definitely not what I had pictured. And again, I was open to going with, I knew that my birth plan needed to be flexible, basically. So they like bring in the ultrasound tech just to verify. And I was like, okay, just so we don't know what we're having. So don't tell me that. And they're like, yep, we're just going to verify the position. So they come in and yep, sure enough. So they're getting ready. They're like, well, the one lady says, I remember exactly how she worded it. She's like, well, the bad news is, your baby's breech and we got to do surgery. She said, but the good news is you'll meet him or her within the hour. And I thought, oh my gosh, I told all of our parents, both my parents are remarried. So I have 2 sets of grandparents for our children, and he's got the 1 set of grandparents. So there's 6 grandparents. But I said, don't come in. It's going to be a while, labor, whatever. And so it was like, nobody was there yet. And I was like, I want my mommy. So, I hear her talking to my husband on the phone. His name is CJ, by the way. So if you hear CJ, I can hear her asking him if I'm okay. And he's like, oh, no. Like, she's okay, but like not okay. Like emotionally or physically. So she gets to me just in time. Like, I see her as they're wheeling me away down the hall for surgery. I see her like in passing, and I get like 2 seconds to like be like, okay, I love you, I'll see you soon. Like, oh. So I see her for like just barely a second. She ended up telling me later she was in the drive-through, paid for her food, and was in between windows, and she jumped out of line to get to me. And I was like, she's yelling out the window, I gotta go, my daughter's in labor. So she paid for her food and never got it. And I thought, oh man. But yeah, just one of those stories that I'm like, oh. But yeah, so they told me, actually, they ended up telling me that I was 7 centimeters, 100% effaced when I got there. So by the time I'm in, they don't let the spouse come in at that hospital at that time. I mean, I don't know. I'm assuming that's very similar. They just don't let you in there when you're getting the spinal block. They don't let anyone else in the room. I think that's most places. But so I was in there and they said, all right, you're going to get a pinch and a poke. We're doing your spinal block. And so I'm like, okay, so they're trying to get me to hunch over as much as possible, which all the mommies out there know when you have a belly in front of you that's ginormous. First of all, you can't really hunch over that much. And even when you do, your baby's already smushing in your lungs. So like you can't expand your lungs as it is, but then when you're hunching over, you're squishing them even more. So I'm trying to breathe through the contractions and hold still and hunch over. And I have this weird thing in my lower back where like I can't like round forward as much as I want. Like I have found this out. I used to do cheerleading, and they used to try to push me down further to do stretches. I'm like, I don't go any further. This is as far as I go. So I was trying to, hold still and breathe through my contractions, and I'm crying because I'm upset. And so I grabbed 2 huge handfuls of the nurse that is standing in front of me trying to help. I grabbed 2 huge handfuls of her scrubs in my hands, and I'm like pulling on her outfit. And then I'm like breathing through, and I'm like hunching over, and I'm like, ooh, and I realize what I'm doing, and I like let go of her scrubs real quick. I was like, sorry. She's like, no, honey girl, you do what you got to do. It's all right. I'm like, all right, thank you. So, I mean, they were all super, super nice. And I'm sitting there, and 11 stabs later, I'm like, okay, what's going on? Because they're still not done, and I'm getting poked left and right. They said 2 pokes, and that was it. They're having trouble getting the spinal block in. I thought, oh, crap. Well, they finally get it in, and they finally let my husband back in. And I don't think I've ever cried so hard in my life. It's such a strange sensation to not feel being cut open, but like you feel it, but you don't feel it. It's weird. I don't think I've ever felt so like helpless over what was happening to me in my entire life. I just laid there and just cried. Part of it was being sad for the birth that I wanted. Part of it was being sad for having to be cut open, because I knew the recovery was going to be different. The way my body looked after was going to be different than I expected. And so I was kind of mourning the loss of like what I had pictured for that day, but also I was beyond words excited to meet my baby, that I remember crying so hard I was like gasping for air. I was probably actually hyperventilating a little bit now that I'm thinking of it, because I was crying so hard. But my husband was right there by my head, and I couldn't see anything. And that, I guess, is one of the things that is really hard about having a C-section. It was such a whirlwind that I don't know if they would have done the clear screen or not. I know some hospitals do that and some don't. In hindsight, I probably would have asked for the clear screen, but it was this big blue wall in front of me. And I remember feeling like I grew this baby and I worked so hard to take care of it. And I can't even I don't even get to like see it come out. I don't know, like literally watch it happen and know like my baby came straight out of me and it goes straight into my arms kind of thing. I don't know how to word that, but I ended up seeing her for the first time off to my left-hand side when they took her to the side, and I don't know what they were doing, wiping her down, or I don't know what all they were doing, because it's kind of foggy, but I remember looking off to the left and seeing and hearing her. I could hear when they first pulled her up and out, my husband was the one to say, "It's a girl." So there was a nurse taking pictures, and with the iPhone, they have the motion pictures automatically turned on. So you can hear him say in one of the pictures, if you like push and hold the picture, you can hear him say, "It's a girl." I was like, oh my gosh, that's such a cool thing to have the audio for. And you can hear her little cries, and you can hear me sobbing, like in little clips of all the pictures. She was 8 pounds, 10 ounces. She was folded in half. My husband described her looking like a turkey because her feet were completely up by her ears. So she was Frank Breech, butt wedged all the way down. The doctor said, I don't know if you heard it or not, but when we pulled her up and out, it was like a noise because she was like suctioned down in there. And so later, when I had described my situation to like some doulas and midwives that I ended up talking to during my second pregnancy, they're like, yeah, that's probably because she was like on her way out and they pulled her back up and out through the incision. So I said, oh, I hadn't thought of that, because they're like, you practically did labor. If you were 7 centimeters when you got there, she was probably coming out. So if they would have just let her come out, she probably would have just came out. But I was like, man, find that all out later. I was like, geez. So they hand her to me, and it's like almost like an out of body experience. Like I grew this, and it just feels weird now that I've experienced both, it's kind of strange and like weird to like have your baby like cut out and like off to the side and then like handed to you. It's just like this weird feeling. Like I hopefully somebody knows out there what I'm talking about.
No,
Because
I
I
completely get
can't.
it. Like it's just not it's not what you expect, and it's also just not the way, I don't know if I want to use the phrase the way it should be, but it's not
Not the way nature intended it. So
right.
it just feels a little bit wrong, but
Mhm.
it feels so right nonetheless because you just want to be with your baby. I guess is the main thing. You just want to hold him or her, and you just want to know they're okay, and you just want them to go straight from you into your arms. That was my natural like knee jerk reaction. Is like it just felt so weird to just have her off to the side and just be looking at her like I guess that's my baby over there. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't see her come out, so I don't know, I didn't see her come out, so that it just felt weird. So yeah, and she was healthy. She laughed right away. She's still a little booby monster. So yeah, I guess the first one was traumatizing in the sense that I just really felt like it was a whirlwind. I didn't have any kind of time to catch my breath or think or have a say or ask questions. It was just like, oh, you need surgery and off we go. So I guess like that was my biggest thing is I if there's an expecting mom out there who thinks that she, wants it one way, but is okay to be flexible, just make sure you have your ducks in a row, like because I didn't know there was all this stuff that I could ask for. I could ask for music. I could ask for lighting. I could ask for a clear blind thing in front of me. I could ask for it, I've read it's called family centered C sections or gentle C sections or something like that. But like I didn't know there was stuff I could ask for. And then just different preferences with your babies that you can ask for and you can speak up about ahead of time. My husband did get to quote unquote cut the umbilical cord. I don't know if he actually cut it or if he just cut a section of it after they had already cut it the other ways. I don't know. But I saw that he got to cut it in pictures, but I didn't even get to see him do that. I feel like there was a few things that I missed out on because I was in the middle of getting stitched back up and stuff like that. So I don't really remember much from the actual recovery room. I remember more from the next room that I was in after. I see pictures and I'm like, oh yeah, that happened. Because like my husband got skin to skin in the recovery room. And so I remember vaguely like uh, him doing skin to skin and then realizing we didn't have pictures of it. So then he did skin to skin again so we could take a picture. But I just feel like that's a little bit hazier because I was just like hopped up on meds and didn't really know what was going on at first. So that part's like it feels a little foggy.
I just had a conversation with another mom just the other day about how the memories that her and I both had from our C-sections was it seemed like it came from the pictures that we had, but it wasn't like a firsthand memory, if that
Yeah,
makes
like the
sense.
pictures, the pictures kind of jog your memory a little bit, but you can't. The picture produces a memory, but it doesn't fully like it's not fully your own memory. You kind of get it from the picture.
How did you make the connection to wanting to do a home birth with your second baby? When did that come into play?
Okay, so that was super like scrambling last minute because my baby was very persistently breech and I did all the things to flip the baby and it was like all the things. I did acupuncture and moxibustion, massage, chiropractic work. I was doing somersaults and flips in the pool, swimming upside down, spinning babies, pulsatilla, like all these things. I was doing all the things to try to flip the baby. I did ECV. I did just an ECV in a doctor's office, and then I also did one in the hospital. Both failed.
At what point was it that you discovered baby was breech in that second pregnancy?
Like, we had a lot of ultrasound towards the end. So it was like at the 30-week one, they didn't really say anything, but like I was more focused on it than they were, because every time I went in the office, this is another thing that frustrated me, is every time I went in, they'd say, "Why haven't we scheduled you for surgery yet?" And I'm like, "You have been told multiple times that my plan is for a VBAC." So I was getting frustrated that they were asking me about surgery every single visit. And I'm like, okay, this, you have a chart. You like, I was one, I felt like, I felt like I could have been a meme. Like, do you even read my chart, bro? So it was very, like, the planning of the home birth was very, very, very last minute, honestly, like uncomfortably last minute, because I felt desperate and I was scrambling. And so I guess that requires a little bit of backtracking, because I was talking to a relative of mine who is a midwife. Well, she's not a relative of mine. She's a relative of my stepmom. So I didn't even know like she existed until like I said something about a doula, and she's like, "I think my niece does that." So it was my stepmom's niece, and I was like, "Oh, well then maybe I could talk to her and get some like information." I don't even know if I had a specific question. I just wanted to talk to her because I consider it hiring a doula, so that way my process, like I just wanted every chance I could have to have a smooth vaginal delivery. And I had thought, they said that breech babies were so rare that I just assumed that she was just a rarity, and this one would be head down, and I would get a doula, and it would just make things smoother. And the more I had talked to, first I talked to my stepmom's niece, and then I started interviewing doulas, because she's like, "Yeah, you should hire somebody, talk to at least 3, and find somebody that you vibe with." I'm like, okay. So that's what I did. And the more I talked to them, the more like shocked I was that there's all these different questions that I could have asked that I just didn't even know. Like, because I consider myself a respectful person. If a doctor who is the professional tells me this is what I recommend, I'm going with their professional advice or opinion. And that's because they do this, like, that's what their living is and their life's work is this is what they do. So I'm going to take them at their word. It wasn't till I started talking to these doulas and I found support groups on Facebook that I realized that I was not the only one with this issue of feeling a little bit traumatized from my C-section. And I was, it's a little bit like, I guess I was a little ashamed to admit that I was so bothered by it, because, yeah, my birth plan's flexible. I'll do whatever it takes. Like, you just want your baby to be healthy. But like, for it to be like acknowledged and okay that I was a little bit like I said, traumatized from my experience, like, because people will minimize it. They'll be like, "But you got your healthy baby, and you're healthy and you're fine and everything's fine. So like, why are you so bothered by it?" And it's like they don't get it. But I found all these other women in these groups on Facebook, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, they get it. I'm not a weirdo. I'm not selfish. I'm not, all these things that sometimes you're made to feel like for feeling a little bit, scarred by, like, literally, like, emotionally and physically scarred by like a C-section that was not expected." So I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is an actual like problem. It's like an epidemic."
It
It's like
is.
there's so many that are just, they just feel like they have no say in what's going on with their body, and it's scary. So the more I found out, the more I was like, "Oh my gosh." And then each ultrasound getting closer and closer to my due date, the baby was still breech. And so I'm like beginning to panic. And so I'm starting to talk to, like, I'm trying to find providers in any hospital anywhere close by that will support me in my VBAC still. And there's none. And if there were, they said there was 2 that I had a shot in, there was 2 that I had a shot in the dark with, and one of them said they were so full they could not take any more births, like they were like at capacity for how many they were allowed to take. So I understand. And then the second one, it was too late in my pregnancy to transfer care. And I'm like, okay, that makes no sense because this isn't an issue until it's an issue. So like at 37 weeks, then, if your baby's still breached, then they're like, yeah, your baby's probably like the chances go like less and less likely that the baby's going to turn on its own, but it's not an issue until you're ready for delivery. They say like, oh, your baby's breached at 32, 34, 36 weeks. Like, it's fine. Like, it's not a big deal. They'll probably turn. Most of them do. So like, it's not an issue, like I said, until it's an issue. And then it's too late to transfer care now because now I'm at this milestone of weeks that is really kind of a little bit BS anyways, because a due date is sort of a shot in the dark too. So it's like, what am I expected to do here? So there was like nobody. So I started asking on these support groups that I was in on Facebook. Do you know any? Because I had heard of, my friend said that she had a midwife in the hospital where she gave birth. So maybe midwives could come to the hospital. But I didn't know that in Illinois, like midwives aren't like legally recognized. So like if you want to hire a midwife like to attend your birth, like you can't. So I'm like, all right, now what do I do? So then these Facebook groups private message me a name. There's like maybe two. One of them is like super close to, the one was like pretty far away. And they're like, people are making suggestions like pack up and go stay like somewhere close to the Indiana border so you can be, because Indiana and Wisconsin, you're allowed to have a birth with a midwife apparently. But in Illinois, I guess we're just a little bit slow here because I don't know what the deal is with that. You can't legally do it, I guess. So I was like, I can't just go stay somewhere and wait for my baby to come. Like I have a toddler, and my husband is the only employee that my parents have. Like we can't just, leave. So I was panicking, and to be perfectly honest, I did not have support to try to deliver him vaginally from my family at first. So that was really, really hard because they saw me doing everything I could to try to turn him. Like I said, I went in for 2 ECVs, and I just did, like, they just, like, if the doctor said I needed a C-section, then they all basically saw it that I needed a C-section, and there was really, like, what was I doing? And so I was talking to the midwife. There was one midwife that was like possibly going to work. And I think it was like I was at probably 37 or 38 weeks at this point, and there's this midwife that might possibly work, but she's got to do a home birth. She can't come to the hospital with me. And so I'm talking to my doula, and I was like, what do I do? And she's like, you know what, whatever you decide, I support you. If you want to try, to give birth at home, I'm there for you. If you want to try, if you feel like the hospital is better for you, there are ways that I can still support you as your doula through a C-section. And I'm like, just even thinking about it, it's crazy that the thought of having another C-section was scarier for me than trying to give birth like a cat under the stairs at home. Like, I would rather, like, that is where my mind was at that point, was like, I had such distrust for my doctors.
So was it really because there wasn't anyone in the hospital that was going to be supportive of a breech vaginal birth that you switched to
Yeah.
this midwife for a home birth then?
Yeah. And after talking with her, I trusted her more because she was listening to me. I would tell her, I told her my original birth story, how when I got there, I was 7 centimeters and 100% when I arrived. My water broke on its own. I fully handled my labor up until that point. I was fine. The thing that bothered me was when they were trying to put the needle in my back and they stabbed me 11 times because they couldn't get spinal block in. That bugged me. Labor wasn't bothering me. I was fine. Like, you know what I mean? So like I wasn't even like They say like sometimes when people get to like 6 or 7 centimeters, they puke and whatever. I was fine. I was okay. So, she was listening to me and she's like, you don't have to do the C-section. She's like, she actually had experience with breech deliveries. And I was like, oh my gosh, like we gotta make this work. But the thing was, at the time, I could not get my husband on board. He said he supported me in my decisions, but his actions and stuff that he would repeat to other people a little bit, like not a lot of other people, just like because he works for my parents, so they would have discussions, and so I felt a little bit alone, a little bit ganged up on, and I was desperate. Like I literally, like I said, I was like I thought about being like a cat and just finding some stairwell to hide under and just go have my babies in a box under the stairs. Like I was just so over it. Like, why can't anyone trust me and my instincts in me and my knowledge of my body? Why does it have to be a fight to just have my baby? Like I didn't understand. Finally, after he saw what I had gone through, basically to appease everybody else, to keep trying to turn the baby, even though I was resolved in the fact that if this baby wants to be Breech, then I will let him or her be Breech, and I am fine with that. I'm ready to deliver Breech. Like, let's just leave it alone. But I basically did the second ECV just to, I hate to use the phrase to shut everybody else up, but I mean, that's basically like, I don't know. I gotta ask him. I don't know why after that second ECV that finally he was on board with it. But after that, it was like a turning point for him to where he was like, you know what? If you want to have the baby at home, like I got your back. Like I'm like, are you sure? Because you said you have, but then you keep fighting me on it. So like, are you sure this time? But yeah. So then it's like we got that birth kit ordered.
And what point was that in your pregnancy? Did you say it was like 37 weeks?
It was almost 39 weeks, I want to say, when we got the birthing kit. Because even at this point, mind you, I had not paid her anything yet. I had not solidified a contract with this midwife. I had not committed to her in any way on paper, but I only met her in person when she came to drop off the birthing pool. I had only seen her the one time in person before I gave birth. They tried everything at my doctor's office to get me to schedule. They actually scheduled me twice without my consent. The first time I canceled, and the second time I just let it lie because I was already delivering. I was in the middle of delivering at home. I was literally at home in labor.
Did you ever tell them that you were switching, or did you just not say anything?
They knew I had gone somewhere else for an ECV, and they were upset about that. And I said, well, because you guys didn't say yes to the ECV until I told you someone else said yes. And then when you did say yes, you said, okay, we'll try the ECV, but only if you schedule surgery right after if it fails. And I'm like, okay, no, not gonna do that, because then you're just not gonna really try for me.
Right.
The weekend before I delivered, they wanted me to come in for an office visit. And my doula and my midwife both warned me that they were probably going to try to scare me. So I went in with a mind frame of, all right, well, this is probably what this appointment is for, because they're just telling me an office visit. They're not even telling me why they want me to come in. It's a Friday, 4th of July weekend, and they want me to come in for an office visit. And I was like, why am I coming? I called. I was like, why do I have to come in? And they just want you to be seen. And at first it went really well. I had to go to this appointment by myself because I had so many appointments at this time that my husband just could not leave work all the time. So I went to this one by myself. And at first it was going well. I felt like she was listening to me. I explained what happened with the Claritin. I explained what happened with some other things that they were pushing upon me, and that I said, no, I want to try a VBAC. And I explained the ECV thing, how they denied me, but then when the other doctor said they would do it, then they said, fine, we'll do it. And then, I explained all that. And I really felt like she was listening to me. I thought, oh, maybe there's one doctor in this practice that I can come to. She proceeds to tell me, and I want to offer a trigger warning at this point, because she proceeds to tell me that when she was, what do they call it when they're learning as a doctor?
Like a resident?
Yes, during her residency, she witnessed a doctor deliver a breech baby, and the baby broke their neck and died.
And she told you
And
that?
she told me that sitting right there in her office, looking me square in the eye and tells me, I just don't want your baby to die. And I just want what's, I just want to, like, she made it seem like she was my friend. She made it seem like she was doing this for me. And
That is so manipulative.
it was, I pissed off that she would say that to me. Even if I said, oh, okay, fine, 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 I will schedule surgery. It would have been at the earliest Monday, July 5th, on my due date at the earliest. And I was seeing and talking to her and her telling me this story of hers on a Friday. So she would have left me worried like that all weekend because of that story she just told me. And I would have to wait for Monday until wait until Monday for surgery regardless. Like,
Yeah,
why would you try to mentally and physically and emotionally torture somebody like that? Like, it's I I didn't even tell my husband what she said to me. I just said she pulled the dead baby card on me. They all said she would, and she did. And I was completely blown away by that.
oh, it's horrible. Horrible.
I ended up getting a letter later from the practice, like the head person or whatever at the practice, saying, like, basically, we're not working with you anymore because you decided to go elsewhere, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, the letter, in her letter, it had referenced me obviously not trusting or feeling safe with them or something like that because I went, else I went outside of their whatever. And I was like, okay, first of all, if you're threatened by me getting a second opinion, that's on you, not on me. And second of all, if you're referencing in your letter that I clearly didn't trust your doctors and I didn't feel safe and whatever, don't you think you need to ask yourself why that is? Like, don't you think,
Seriously.
wouldn't you want to know, like, wow, this person really doesn't trust, like, she's clearly scared and not trusting us and, acting like she doesn't want us to take care of her. Gee, wouldn't you wonder why that is? I mean, I would.
Right. You'd think that they would attempt to fix whatever problem they perceived that there was instead of just cutting ties and then trying to flip it like, okay, well, if you're going to seek care elsewhere, then we don't want you as a patient any longer. Like, you can't be a patient with us anymore. When it's
Yeah.
like, well, you are the one, you had already made the decision to seek care elsewhere. Like
Yeah.
that, yeah, that's just that's just stupid.
Yeah. It was like
Oh, I'm so sorry. That's horrible.
the fact that a doctor schedules C-sections because they're convenient for them, and then his disbelief in that was like shocking to me. Like, they
Yeah,
can't do that. They don't, like it was like it was an ethical issue, which it is, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen.
right. I
So
think
I
that's
I
true of a
was
lot of stuff that happens, I mean, in hospitals in general, but in maternity care and birth and postpartum too.
they have more control over that. Like, I was trying to say, like, so if I were to go into the hospital and go into labor, it's a big question mark of how long is my labor going to last, what type of labor, like, will I have, versus scheduling. I know she's going to be here at 7 in the morning. We're going to prep, we're going to cut the baby out, we're going to stitch her up and then recover and she goes home. Like,
Hmm.
if you think that doctors don't prefer to do it that way, I would say that's a very naive perspective, because they do. And maybe
Hmm.
not all of them. Maybe there's a few out there that really respect the birthing process. I mean, I had all lady doctors. I don't understand, as a woman, how they would think that that was okay to A, talk to me like that, and B, take away the choices for my own body. They wanted to strap me down, drug me up, and cut me open without even letting me go into even any labor at all, which would have been so much healthier for the baby. Imagine being a baby, comfy cozy in your mother's uterus. I'm going to come out when I'm ready. I'm just cozy. I'm going to wait here a little bit longer. I like it here. I'm still developing whatever I'm developing. And what's this? This thing is cutting open my house. My roof is torn off. Oh, I'm being pulled out of here. And now it's really cold. I'm scared. I don't know what's happening. This is not natural. For
Right.
me, if I had a choice, and I understand that sometimes it needs to happen that way. I fully understand it. And I don't mean to down talk any mom who chooses that for her own pregnancy, her own baby, her own well-being. By all means, please make that choice for yourself. That's all I wanted, was for me to be able to make that choice, for me to have a say, and to let my baby decide when he or she was going to come out. And I didn't want to feel like I was helpless and like it was all happening to me. I wanted to feel like I had a say, I was participating in the process. I just felt like belittled and bullied, and like like I didn't have a say. They had their mind made up already. They said they were VBAC supportive, but I honestly think they were more VBAC tolerant. I understand that you don't do breech births, let alone a breech VBAC. I get that, but then why treat me like that for seeking out somebody who can accommodate me? So you go to a doctor and they like, you need surgery on your shoulder. All right, I'm going to get a second opinion. I'm going to go to this doctor. This doctor says you could try physical therapy first, and you don't need surgery on your shoulder until you try physical therapy first. There's a choice there. All I wanted was all the information, informed consent, and to make my choice. I didn't want to just say, all right, I have to have surgery.
And that's
That was
super valid. I
that's all
mean,
I was asking for. And they treated me like crap because of it. And then just the more I was asking, the more I wanted to wait and just like let nature take its course and see if, because people say they flip during labor. I'm like, my
mhm.
baby could flip during labor. You don't even want to let me go into labor. Like, I can't even with you people.
Well, take us to where labor did start for you then. I'm excited to hear this story.
Oh, okay. So I was 4th of July weekend, and I was actually caught up in stagnant, like prodromal labor for like 2 days before I actually was like delivering. So that sounds horrible. And I didn't know that there was such a thing. So for anybody who doesn't know what prodromal, I like it's like Braxton Hicks contractions where your body's practicing and whatnot, but like you're actually like they're like full blown contractions. They're not just little practice ones. So I was like having like full contractions for like 2 days. So I was timing them for like 2 days. It would go about an average of 8 minutes between contractions, and then it would like work its way down to 4 minutes and then bounce back up every time like I would take a bath or something. They just to make sure it was like legit. They're like, get in the bath, see if they calm down a little bit. And it was like they never really calmed down. They just kind of spaced out more. It was 4th of July, Sunday. My family was all having a picnic up at my parents' house, which is like 100 feet away from where we live because we all live on the campground. So I sat separate than basically everybody, so I could get up and walk away every like 6, 7, or 8 minutes to go deal with a contraction and then come back in the room or back out on the patio, wherever they were. I was dealing with that for a couple days, and on the 4th of July, I ended up leaving probably around 8 o'clock. I went home and I was like, I'm going to go try relaxing or taking a bath or something. And they just kept bouncing up and down. They'd get down to 4 minutes, and I'd be like, hey, I'd text my doula, oh, they're going down. And then I get in the tub and then nothing. So I text my midwife, like, I'm struggling, because my doula was like, I'm getting worried about your stamina, because when labor actually does happen, like, you're going to be pooped from dealing with this for like 2 days and like no sleep, because it was like through the night and everything too. So it was like just nonstop. So I ended up talking to my midwife, who I had just like solidified maybe, I want to say, the Thursday before. It was Sunday. So like it was like when I say last minute planning for home birth, like it was like super last minute because of everything. She said, take a cup of Benadryl, drink a glass of wine, and go lay down. We need to slow these down or you're going to be just completely worn out. And I was like, okay. And it's funny because my husband and I are not drinkers like at all, but I do have wine and things like in our home for like if people come over and like, so I was like, I don't even know if I found something, but then I was like, I don't even know where the corkscrew is to get this thing off. So I'm like, he's sleeping in our toddler's room with her. It's like in the middle, it's like probably maybe 2 a.m. I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I find a bottle of wine and I'm looking for a corkscrew and I think, crap, what if I can't find one? What am I going to do? I find it finally. I was like, I had an epiphany. I was like, oh, I think it's over here. So I find it and I slam this glass of wine because like, I don't drink. And so like if I took a sip and then I stopped, like I'd be like I wouldn't want to finish it because I would be put off by it, especially being pregnant too. Just the smell and everything. I was like, oh my God, so I slammed this I almost said bottle. I did not drink a bottle of wine. I slammed this glass of wine and I'm like, oh my, and then I thought, am I going to be drunk from this? Because I literally don't drink. So I drink it and I took the Benadryl and I go lay down and it doesn't stop my contractions, but they kind of space back out again for like an hour and a half. I managed to get like I lay down and I sleep or I'm like half asleep, but it was probably the best sleep I got in a couple of days. So I like an hour and a half. And then all of a sudden it's like the contractions are like 4 minutes apart, but they're lasting like 2.5 minutes. So I feel like I can barely get my bearings before there's like another one. So I messaged my doula. I was like, okay, so they're still at this annoying 4-minute mark, but now they're like 2.5 minutes long. So I feel like they're like 1 minute apart, is what I told her. I was like, I texted her. So then it was like, you could almost hear the music. They're like, everybody rushed to get to me because they're like, oh crap, that's like, oh my gosh, now we have to hurry up and get there because they're like right on top of each other almost. So then my doula rushes to get there and my midwife rushes to get to me. And it's like hour and a half later, everybody's here. So I've got a doula, the original doula that I hired, super amazing, super supportive, wonderful person. She actually came to the ECV with me too. She showed up first and I don't even remember why, but she came in and I was already standing and like we have a bathroom in our master bedroom where I was at, and I was already standing in my bathroom doorway and I think I at some point had gone to the bathroom and then just not put, because I sleep in a nursing cami and underwear at this point because I'm so pregnant. I'm like, I don't, pants get all bunched up, whatever. I'm like hot as an oven anyway. So I must have at some point went to the bathroom and then just never put any bottoms back on because she showed up and I remember standing there in just my cami with no underwear, no pants, no nothing. And like at the time I didn't really think much of it, but now I think back, I'm like, she showed up and I'm just standing around with no pants on. Like I'm sure she's seen like everything, but I just was cracking myself up over thinking about it later. Like she just shows up and I'm just standing around with no pants on. I'm like,
It's very normal in the birth world. It's fine.
Yeah. My husband was like, oh, you're Winnie the Poohing it, huh? And I'm like, yeah. So she's standing there and she's, she's not asking me like 100 questions, but she's just observing and just, my husband in the meantime, her and my husband are getting the birth pool set up and then they have it all blown up and it's ready to go. It's in our master bedroom with us. Because we live actually right above the office where people check in. So I wanted to put it in the bedroom and not the living room in case like my mom came upstairs for some reason or because that would be like literally right above the office. So if I was making any noise, anybody who came into the office would hear me. So we had it back in the bedroom for like minimal interruptions. And they got it all set up and they realized, we don't know how we're going to fill it. So the midwife gets there and she's like, did you order the water birth kit? And I was like, I ordered the birth kit off of, like, you go to this website and you order a birth kit under the business name of the midwife. So I ordered it under her like business name. And apparently there was like where you could pick home birth or water birth, or like there was a distinction somewhere that I missed. So we didn't have an adapter to fill the pool up. So it was like, well, I guess we can take the pool down, get that out of the way. So I was like, wow, I like wanted that water birth, but we just didn't want to fuss about filling it up when I was like kind of already in the thick of it. So they barely said anything to me the whole time. They just kind of let me wander around in labor. I would move back and forth from like sitting on the toilet with like my feet up on a stool, so like my knees were bent, and then I would go kneel next to my bed. You know how like in the movies they have like little kids praying next to their bed, saying their prayers before bed? Like that's the position I was in, kneeling next to my bed. Then I'd be on the bed in all fours, and that wasn't as comfortable for me personally as like just standing or squatting or kneeling. Basically as much upright as I could be is where I wanted to be. And they just let me do whatever. They weren't trying to tell me anything other than just monitoring the heart rate once in a while. They weren't saying do this, do that, whatever. Once in a while they suggest just try a different position to avoid being stagnant, but they really just let me basically control my own destiny in that way. And just they didn't, I don't know, I just like the fact that they just let me do my thing. So my favorite thing ended up being the thing that helped me learn how to like actually work the baby downward, because I could literally feel it, like almost like I could feel him scooting down, was a position where I was sitting on the toilet, and for some reason I asked for this extra folding chair that was just randomly sitting in my room. I don't remember why. And I asked for the folding chair. And so what I did was I sat on the toilet, and as I was contracting, I grabbed the back of the chair and lifted it up and like pulled my feet up off the ground and like labored like it was like I was doing reps with the chair. And that was what actually taught me how to push and like work him down. Eventually they're like, you probably don't want to have your baby on the toilet, honey, so let's move over here again. And that was like one of the only things they like I said, told me to do, because they just really let me do my thing. And so I moved next to the bed, and like my husband would hold my hands, and also like he would provide resistance. So like I would squat and he would like pull on me, like his wrists were crossed, so like I could really get a grip on his hands. We were like palm to palm, and I was kneeling at one point. When she first got there, I should say, when the midwife first got there, I was again at a 7, and I was almost 100% effaced, but she said the one side was a little thicker, so I labored with my one leg up for a while, kneeling with my one leg up, and then she said it kind of helped the other side thin out, which I thought was fascinating. But so it was kind of a similar situation where she showed up and I was like already at 7 and basically 100%, and I just kind of I was just kind of like zoning out the whole time, just breathing. And they gave me a couple spoonfuls of honey throughout, which I thought was amazing, best honey ever in the middle of labor, and then some sips of Gatorade here and there. I was kneeling, my right knee on the ground, my left knee out to the side, holding my husband's hand, and I was so tired, like fatigued, because I had already been laboring for so long, but it really wasn't that long since they had been there. I remember walking from the toilet to the bedside. I said I was walking like a cowboy, because my knees had to be out sideways, and I was like waddling, like he was really down low at that point. for some odd reason, I just didn't really make eye contact with anybody until after. I think I was just in that kind of weird transitional headspace where like I was just, everything around me kind of disappeared, and it was just me in labor in my own head. And I remember looking up the one time I made eye contact with him the entire labor. I looked up at my husband and he just smiled at me and just nodded like I can't even describe it. Like he just nodded like you're doing it. And I was just, oh, that was awesome. I'll never forget that. I could feel him coming down. I could feel my baby coming down. I still didn't know if it was a he or she at this point. And I thought I heard someone behind me say she. And he said the same thing. My husband said he thought he heard something about a her or a she or something at one point too. And I remember doing some pushing and I felt something just plop out. And I thought to myself, was that it? And I'm like, I remember thinking it, but I don't think I said it out loud. And then someone said, my bag of waters or something like just came out. And I remember going, was that it? I'm not even sure. Like, what was that? And then I pushed and I could feel him coming down and going back in and then coming down and then going back in a couple times. And I knew that this was a thing. I knew that this would happen. Not to everybody. I just knew it was a possibility, I guess, that like if I wasn't doing it completely strong enough that he would just bounce up and down a little bit. So I'm like, oh, so he's there. I just like he or she is there. I just gotta, she said like, all right, you don't want to get in this rhythm where you're pushing and they're just bouncing up and down. She's like, you gotta, I'm like, okay, I know. I'm like, I'm thinking, I know. I gotta get the strength because I'm exhausted. So it's like I would give myself little countdowns and I'd wait for the contractions to show up and I'd count in my head and take a deep breath and then just like I wouldn't allow myself to just sit there and not do it, but at the same time like I needed to like mentally and physically prepare to like start pushing. So I would give myself these little countdowns like, okay, like you gotta do it. Like I would have these little conversations in my own head. So there was maybe once or twice where I told myself, okay, the next set of contractions, I'm just going to breathe through them. I'm not going to push. I'm just going to breathe through, give myself a little rest break for a second. And then I felt like a whole just mass come down. And there's pictures. I know it kind of made my midwife uncomfortable to have like full video and like full pictures and everything because she's so vulnerable to like the legal state of Illinois. So I completely understand. So there's only there's a couple pictures that my doula took, but his whole butt is hanging down and just dangling there. And there's a picture where his whole butt is out, and then there's a picture where everything is out but his head. So there's like a whole. So what happened was he's facing my backside, so there's just a lovely visual of my just butthole front and center in these pictures. I'm like, okay, that's cool. There's my butt. So yeah, it's crazy. And so he's facing my backside. So like when he's coming out, both of he's Frank Breech, so both of his legs it's all legs, and he just looks like, I don't know if you've ever been on the ride Splash Mountain, where at the end of the ride the bear is all tied up in a trap and he's just dangling there and his butt is just hanging down. That's what it looked like. For any Disney fan out there, they know what I'm talking about. The bear dangling in the rope trap at the end. That's what he looked like, hanging out of my butt or out of my spaces. And then his feet flopped forward. And so it was just, everything was out, arms, everything was out except for his head. And so then all she said was, okay, I just need you to, she said it calmly. I basically, like, matter of fact, I just need you to push his head out. And so then I knew, like, all right, this is the VIP moment here, because like this is the make or break of the situation. So I'm not screwing around. I waited for my next set of contractions and just bloop, pushed his head out because I knew there was no messing about now. I'm like, this is like I'm gonna give a good push. I better do it now because I'm not screwing around with bouncing him up and down, trying to get his head out. Like this is, I'm gonna just do as best as I can, all in one shot, and just get his head out. So that's what I did, and he came out, and then I turned around and had him put on my chest right away, and I was sobbing, and he was wrapped up in a towel, and I was just sobbing, and I still at this point didn't know if I had a boy or a girl in my arms. I just knew that I had a healthy baby that was breathing and that was okay. And we were rubbing him real good just to make sure he was stimulated. So we're rubbing his back and stimulating him real well. And I want to say it was the midwife's assistant said something about boy. And then there's a video of me saying, it's a boy. Oh, we didn't know. And I'm like crying and oh my goodness. Oh, my husband's crying around my back, and we're just both just crying like idiots, and it was amazing. It was so it was so fulfilling and so satisfying, and almost like just in your face people that didn't think I could like those it mostly the doctors that were just like surgery, surgery, surgery. I just want to be like, see what you did.
That's
And
incredible.
it was just nuts. I had a little trouble with my placenta after it was falling apart. So I pushed out like the majority of my placenta, but she had to like reach in and grab it like 3 times. And that was like not fun.
So like a big part of it came out like
A big
with the
part of it
cord and
came
everything, and then there
out.
was still some
Yeah. And
stuck.
it was like falling apart. It was breaking out. It was like breaking into pieces, she said. So she's like, she looked at me like, I'm sorry. Like, I have to reach in there and get the rest of it. I'm sorry. And I was like, oh, crap.
Had
So
she
I like,
done had she done like cord traction or anything to try to get it out, or was it just left alone and that's just how it came out?
I don't know what that is. I'm assuming whatever normal procedures there is to try to get it out intact, but it was just kind of falling apart. So I think she just wanted to make sure all of it came out.
Well,
Yeah,
then
and
how
I accidentally peed on her while she was doing that. So she's like,
you
don't worry about it. She's like, that's normal.
yeah, you only have so much control.
Yeah, when she was trying to check for it and stuff, I think like just try to push out a little bit, and I was like, beep, oh, you peed on me a little bit. Like, oopsie.
So what was the rest of that immediate postpartum time like? Did you get tucked into bed and did baby latch right away?
Yes, it was magical. Skin to skin right away. They took my cami. My cami was all full of gunk and sweat and whatever else there is. They took my cami and we put them on me for skin to skin right away. They were like these magical little fairies moving about my house. They had found eggs because the honey that I was having spoonfuls of during my labor, they had found in my pantry and brought it in, and then were feeding me that. But then, like after I gave birth, they just went into my kitchen, found some eggs, cooked me up some eggs, and then my husband was feeding them to me while I was snuggling my new baby, and I was like, "Oh, this is the life.
That's how it
This
should be.
is how it should be." Yeah, I was like, because beforehand we had planned for hospital, so I got these like cute little bags to pack for the hospital, and I was like, I get a coming home outfit for him or her. I had a boy option and a girl option, and all this stuff for hospital. And it was like I didn't have to pack anything. It's all right here,
Yeah, you
and
just get to stay home and
yeah,
enjoy it.
yeah. And they weighed him in this little sling thing that was super cute, and he had his first poop right, like I have a picture. I don't know why I took a picture of his poopy diaper, but I did. And I have a picture of his little meconium poop. And yeah, he got looked over and everything was great. And I sat there. My husband was feeding me eggs in bed and had my own bed and my own pillow, my own blanket. So it was like any of the smells that he was smelling right away. It was like home. Any sensory things that he was experiencing was all home, not like an operating room or anything like strange.
Right.
So that was cool.
That's very cool. Oh, it's so awesome. I haven't had a ton of I think I have two other moms who have had breech
Mm-hmm.
VBACs at home, but there's not, I mean, this is just such a unique story, and I'm so glad that you were willing to share it because I know that
Thank
there's
you.
other
Yeah.
women out there who are in these same situations, and I've had a lot of moms on that have had their C-sections because of a breech baby. So just
Mm-hmm.
getting these stories out there and letting women know that it is possible to have a breech baby at home, whether it's your
Mm-hmm.
first baby or your second and you haven't had a C-section or it's after a C-section, it's very
Mm-hmm.
possible. It's just that
Yeah.
they don't teach providers in the hospital how to handle breech deliveries anymore. So finding a provider who is skilled in that and able to support that is usually the hardest part just because it's
Yes.
not
Yes.
taught.
Right. There's starting to be more and more, I think, and honestly, I think during the pandemic, everybody's been home more and living more sedentary lifestyles. I think her name is Gail Tully, the Spinning Ladies baby.
Hmm.
Um, did I say Spinning Babies lady?
You said
Or did I?
spinning ladies, baby. But
I was
I
like,
knew what you meant.
I was like, wait, what did I just say? Hashtag mom brain. Um, the Spinning Babies lady. She's and I kind of agree. I think if there's going to be a situation where there's going to be an increase in breech babies because we're not watching our posture as much at home and stuff like that's going to play a big part in possibly more breech babies emerging. So but yeah, like there's no shame in a C-section and there's no shame in someone who chooses that. I honestly, like for me, it's just I just wanted the choice. I just wanted the chance to let my body try the thing that it was made for. And like I fully support and acknowledge a mother's right to choose what type of birth that she's most comfortable with, if that can be an option. There are circumstances where surgery can save a mother or a baby or both, and like those are exceptional circumstances, and I completely understand that. But for me, this was just a matter of I didn't know. They made the mistake with my first birth in telling me that my baby was, oh, your baby's head down, she's ready to go. But after the fact, they're like, no, your baby's been like this for weeks. And when I looked back at the 24-week ultrasound that I had with her, she was breech at that time. So they said that they made the comment that she was like that for quote unquote a while. So they made the mistake and thought they were feeling her head when they were feeling her butt. And if I would have known that I could have asked them to verify via ultrasound there at the end, I would have. That there's things that I could ask for or question. Now I know that if this were a circumstance again where I could find out, like, okay, if you're not 100% sure that this is what's going on, then we need to find out. So, like, now just like, and there's stuff to be informed about that I didn't even know to inform myself about, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you don't
Like,
know the
how do you
questions
know?
to ask sometimes.
Yes, yes, yes. It's like until you go through something. So, like, literally, I just want to stress to anybody who had a similar circumstance to me that, like, I mean, you did the best you could with like what knowledge you had at the time, and that's all you can do. And there's no shame in having a C-section or choosing a C-section. But like for me, this breech birth was so validating and so freeing, and like it was kind of like honestly like with the way my doctors and everything in that practice had treated me, it's almost like my middle finger back at them, like like
Yeah.
see, like you guys did this and made me so crazy at the end, and like everything was great, everything's fine, like I told you so, basically. They should have not looked down on me so much for asking questions or wanting choices. I just, like I said, as women doctors, I couldn't believe they behaved that way. So like in the future too, even with like my children's pediatricians, like if I'm asking questions and they're making me feel bad about it, like it's time to find someone else then.
Definitely. I think that's a big red flag and just something that often gets overlooked because we
You put so
we
much trust there. There's so
right.
much trust there, and like you take them at their word, and they take advantage of that. I mean, I'm not going to say a blanket statement like they all do it, but I mean, with how many people that I have read online have this issue, it's a big problem.
This leads perfectly into the last question that I always like to ask all of the moms that I have on, and that is, if there is something that you would want other moms to know, or other moms in a similar circumstance to be aware of, something that you've learned over your journey, or just advice that you have. And I know you've already mentioned a lot, so if there's anything else that you haven't mentioned, just what
Sure.
would that be, or what would the message be that you want to get out there?
I know that we live in a crazy time where there's a lot of misinformation out there on the internet, but the internet isn't all evil either. If you pick your sources wisely, you can educate yourself. I had watched as many as I could squeeze in there at the end, educating myself on Breech natural births, because you just never know what circumstance you might come upon within your own birthing journey. But as much as you can, educating yourself and surrounding yourself with providers and support people who support your vision for what you want your birth to look like. There was a time in the end where I just had to stop talking about it to certain people because it was causing me more stress than not. I had to be careful who I mentioned what to, because I just needed support. I didn't need to hear anything else. I already had enough bullying and whatever from the doctors that I didn't need anything but support. So educating yourself and surrounding yourself with support, and supportive people. Oh, somebody woke up from a nap.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much just for being willing to share your story and get it out there,
Yeah.
and just share everything that you learned along the way too.
Yeah. I appreciate you asking me. And if honestly, like, if there's anybody that wanted to reach out to me for any other questions, I'm open to that too. Because nobody should feel like I felt in the position that I was in towards the end of my pregnancy. It should be like a peaceful and exciting time, not at all what I was experiencing. I don't want that for anybody. So I've been really trying to find ways to help that situation by being an active member on these Facebook support groups that I'm in and everything like that. So I'm open to helping however I can, because nobody should feel like that.
Well, thank you. I know that'll be very appreciated. And I know that this story someone's going to come across it and be like, oh my gosh, she had a breech home birth. Why can't I have a breech home birth? Why can't I learn all of these things? Why can't I do this research? And why can't this be an option for me?
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Home Birth After Cesarean podcast. Make sure to subscribe, leave a rating, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. If you're interested in sharing your home birth after cesarean story, send us an email at hbacpodcast@gmail.com. See you next week.